Good evening, and welcome to the twice monthly meeting of Westminster's Mayor and Common Council. During the public health emergency, we will be conducting our meetings virtually, and they will be available and streamed live on the city's Facebook page, as well as the Community Media Center channel and website. We'll begin, as we do every meeting, with the pledge to the flag, followed by a moment of silence. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Copies of tonight's agenda and the entire information packet that the council will be using are available online on the city's website. We'll begin with the approval of minutes. We have minutes from the Mayor and Common Council meeting of February 22nd, 2021, and the closed session of the same date. May I have a motion to approve the minutes?
I'll move, Mr. President.
Second.
Thank you. I have a motion from Mr. Cavacci and a second from Mr. Dayhoff. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Opposed, say
Aye.
nay. The ayes seem to have, and the ayes have it, and the minutes are approved. Tonight, we have a presentation on our fiscal year 2020 financial reports. And for that, from our outside firm of auditors of Brown, Schultz, Sheridan, and Fritz, we have Wanda Lynn and Ryan Harshman. Ms. Lynn, Mr. Harshman, thank you for joining us. And Ms. Lynn, we'll turn to you to start us off.
Happy to be here this evening to review your financial statements. We'll jump right in with a high-level review. I'm giving Ryan a second. There we go. We're going to start with the required communications. And just so everyone knows, our next slide, Ryan.
All right.
Our responsibilities. We're responsible for expressing opinions on the financial statements based on our audit about whether the financial statements have been prepared by management in accordance with accounting principles generally accepted in the United States of America. You have all received the financial statements previously. The notes in the financial statements, note 1 includes all of your significant accounting policies, and there were no changes to those policies during this past fiscal year. As far as audit adjustments, we did recommend various entries to adjust the city's account balances, and they were reviewed and approved by management. Additionally, there were some uncorrected misstatements that we identified during the audit. They were immaterial, and so they were not adjusted, and your city's financial statements are still materially correct. We did not have any difficulties or issues. And as far as communication of material weaknesses and other recommendations, there were improvements this year. There are a few matters that we will be reviewing towards the end of the presentation. And I'm happy to say that we did issue an unmodified opinion, which is a clean opinion, the best opinion that you can receive. Want to make you aware that your financial statements do include accounting estimates. Some of the more significant areas are the collectability of taxes and other receivables, the depreciation on the capital assets that you have, the accrued compensated absences, the split between the current and non-current portions, and the net pension and total other post-employment benefit liabilities. Those estimates are based on reports performed by actuaries, your unbilled water and sewer services, and your financial statements also include many different accounting disclosures. A lot of them address these areas of estimates. You also have a note to your financial statements that include all of your a detailed listing of all the debts that you have outstanding and their terms, as well as commitments that the city has made at year end but had not incurred the expenses yet. And also, obviously, just a general blurb about COVID, since no one knows really what the impact is going to be to the city. accounting standards are forever changing, it seems. So you will have a year off again. So the next one will take impact for leases July 1, 2021. And really what that is doing is they are eliminating reporting expenses for operating leases if your lease is less than 1 year. So the city will be recording an asset as well as a liability when this lease standard goes into effect. And then the following year after that, there is another change related to conduit debt obligations. And that is just trying to get more consistency between various organizations that have conduit debt, and do not expect any significant impact there for the city. As far as our objectives, our audit is performed in accordance with generally accepted auditing standards and the standards applicable to financial audits contained in government auditing standards. Due to the amount of federal funding that you receive, you are required to have an additional level of review, which comes under the government auditing standards. And our goal is to obtain reasonable but not absolute assurance that the financial statements are free of material misstatement. And we do that through a variety of methods, but we test basic supporting documents and disclosures. We assess the principles utilized in management significant estimates, and we also evaluate the overall financial statement presentation. And now Ryan's going to jump in and give you some of the numbers.
Yep. Hi, guys. So I'll start here with your statement of net position. This is a snapshot at a point in time as of June 30th, 2020. This gives a broad overview of the current financial position of the city. What you'll see there is you have current assets of 49 million versus your current liabilities of about 6.6 million. Your various capital assets of 156 million, and then other non-current assets of 4 million. Subtract out your non-current liabilities and deferred inflows of resources of 54, almost 55 million. And you come to a total net position across the whole city of $148 million. And then moving on to your operating results, in the general fund, you'll see that taxes increased. 468,000 relates to real estate taxes due to the increased assessments or assessment value of the properties. And also general capital outlay increased by approximately $2 million due to the work performed at 45 West Main Street for the new town hall or city hall, or the administrative offices. And then also the housing revenue and expenses, they increased by about $250,000 just due to various payments and how those grants work. Moving on to the proprietary funds, there was a change of accounting estimate this year related to unbilled water and sewer services. Basically, this was to better align the estimate with how the actual billings work. And this resulted in a decrease in revenue for the sewer fund to $274,000 and in the water fund of $232,000. What you'll see in the sewer fund, there was significant capital expenditures this year related to the ENR project, which is about $19 million. About $7 million was funded through debt, and about another $7 million or so was increased or was funded through the various grants through the state of Maryland. There's a $185,000 increase in sewer billings and $130,000 increase in water billings due to the rate increases that took effect this year. And also, as you'll see here, the fiber fund continues to operate at a very large deficit. before the interfund transfer from the general fund of 144,000. The total net loss in the fiber fund was approximately $1.1 million. Over here is your various cash balances for the years. Not a huge amount of changes there. It's increasing in the water and sewer funds and decreasing in the general fund, generally speaking. Here's a breakdown of all your various sources of revenues in a graph format here. What you'll see is by far your largest source of revenue is the various taxes that the city receives. And then also a lot of intergovernmental revenue, a lot of which is all the grants and things like that. That's where that goes, in which a large portion of that relates to the housing fund as well. And then moving over to expenses, you'll see pretty much in both 2020 and 2019, the largest expenses are public safety, which mostly relates to the police force. And you also see the capital outlay took up a larger percentage this year than it did in the past. And that's because of the build out of 45 West Main. And then over here for your revenue breakdown, pretty consistent with sewer, water, and fiber and the proprietary funds year to year. But then what you'll see this year is there's a very large capital contribution, which relates to sewer and that ENR project. So it's roughly about half of the total income in the proprietary funds was related to that, just because that project is so large, and that's really the big story this year with the proprietary funds, is just how large that ENR project is. And then the expenses are very consistent from year to year between the proprietary funds. So I'll turn it back over to Wanda to go over the various findings that we had.
So at the end of the audit, we evaluate the overall results and determine if there are any findings that we need to communicate. And they're broken down into these categories. So material weakness is a deficiency or combination of deficiencies in internal control over financial reporting or compliance, such that there is a reasonable possibility that a material misstatement of the entity's financial statements or material noncompliance with the type of compliance requirement of a federal program will not be prevented or detected and corrected on a timely basis. And then a lesser degree finding is a significant deficiency, and that is defined as a deficiency or combination of deficiencies in internal control over financial reporting or compliance with a type of compliance requirement of a federal program that is less severe than a material weakness, yet important enough to merit attention by those charged with governance. So as far as the financial statements, there was a material weakness related to financial reporting system errors due to system mapping and billing timely. First, there was depreciation on capital assets that was posted directly to net position instead of depreciation expense. And the Parks and Recreation Department recorded accounts receivable that were for fiscal year 2021, which were offset through deferred revenue. Both of those were considered material weaknesses, yet due to the amount of the adjustment that was needed. And then as far as significant deficiency, the cash and equity restrictions, modifications were required to properly state restricted cash and various non-spendable, restricted, and assigned fund balances. Related to the major federal award program, that was the Section 8 Housing Choice Voucher Program that was audited. Both of these are repeat findings from the prior year. As far as the material weakness, there's the monthly voucher management system reports were filed with inaccurate balances and were not corrected timely. And significant deficiency, administrative costs were charged to the public housing agency using allocations that were not documented and were not consistent. Included in the financial statement reporting package that you received, a corrective action plan was prepared by Lydia to address these issues. And then just a general comment, was not elevated to material weakness or significant deficiency. There were some inconsistencies related to prepaids, particularly around software licenses. So we're just recommending that they be evaluated and get reported in the proper year. And that was both in general fund as well as the public housing. So that's a quick overview of your financial results for the year. Are there any questions?
Thank you very much. Are there any questions for Ms. Lynn or Mr. Harshman?
Mr. President,
Mr. Kavachi?
so on the significant finding relative to housing, I know you said that we have a plan in place. Was there a plan put in place the previous year to try to address that and it wasn't followed? Well, I guess you don't really know the answer to that. You know what? It's not really a question for you. Never mind. I'm good. Thank you.
All right. Thank you. Are there any other questions from Ms. Lynn? All right. Well, thank you. It's a very thorough report, and I know we've all had the chance to read through it. Thank you again for taking the time to complete the audit and the financial reports. And we will follow up if any other questions do occur to us.
Yeah, absolutely. Let us know if anything comes up.
Great. Well, thanks very much. We appreciate the relationship we have with you, and we appreciate the honesty of your reporting.
All right. Thank you very much. Have a good
All
evening.
right. Thanks. Take care. All right. We'll move on now to the consent calendar. We have 3 items on the consent calendar for approval. Is there a motion to approve the consent calendar?
Motion to approve.
Then a motion by Mr. Dayhoff. Is there a second?
Second.
A second for Mr. Kavachi. All those in favor of approving the consent calendar, please say aye.
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 All opposed say nay. In the opinion of the chair, the ayes seem to have it and the ayes have it. Consent calendar is approved. Thank you very much. We'll now move on to reports from the mayor. Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. President, but I have no report for this evening. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Mr. Mayor. There's nothing to report on the pandemic update for this evening, so we'll go on to reports from standing committees. Mr. Dayhoff, anything you'd like to share on behalf of the Arts Council? You're muted.
With the Arts Council, the 14th annual Peep Show will begin this Friday. No, it'll start Friday, March 26th and continue through Monday, April the 5th. It's going to be both in person at the Town Mall and online at marshmallowpeepshow.com. And I think that'll conclude the Arts Council report at this point. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Mr. Dayhoff. For the Economic and Community Development Committee, Mr. Yingling.
Just that we're going to be holding a meeting on Friday, Friday morning on a couple items. And so I'll report out at our next council meeting. I know that I just want to let everybody know that the Be Kind initiative, I know that was assigned to our committee. And just with budget and everything going on, and also because the discussion I know we needed Alyssa to be present and to talk about some of the legal possible legal issues with that. So that's actually going to be pushed to an April meeting, which we're going to have. And I believe I think it was Tina contacted me and I informed her of that. So we will take that up, but it's just going to be till a later meeting. So that's all.
Great, thank you, Mr. Yingling. On behalf of the Finance Committee, I will report that the Finance Committee will begin its part of the budget process at its next meeting on Wednesday evening. And we will be able to begin reporting back on the budget to you at our next meeting after that. Personnel Committee, Ms. Gilbert.
I have nothing to report this meeting. Thanks.
Again, thank you. Public Safety Committee, Mr. Kavachi.
Yeah, Mr. President, thank you. A couple of things. Number one, as I have been reporting for some time now, crime still is very low. Very, very few incidents of much crime at all. What little crime there is, it's typically shoplifting and things of that nature at our bigger box stores. So things are good on that front. Wanted to mention that Sergeant Mike Beaumont, his last day in uniform was on Friday. He doesn't think he retires actually officially at the end of the month, but his last working day was Friday. For those of you that are watching that might not know who he is, you would certainly recognize him from his time as our downtown officer riding around on the trike. He was the one I think that first started using that many years ago and spent a number of years cruising Main Street on it and was pretty well known for it. And did a wonderful job as our Main Street officer and has been a solid police officer for his whole career. So we're certainly sad to see him go. But I did want to mention it since he's been with us quite some time. Last item that I wanted to discuss briefly under the Public Safety Committee is something that came up just recently. I wanted to bring it to all of your attention. I'll probably end up needing to have some conversation with you, Councilman Yingling, probably after this meeting. So there's a new establishment that opened up on 86 East Main Street. I think it's 86 or maybe 84. It's a pizza shop, a wood-fire pizza shop that moved into where Sideways and Kona used to be. It seems like they're doing quite well. And that actually is a bit of part of the problem. And the problem is that if you're familiar with that intersection there at Longwell and Main, it's two lanes that then the left-hand turn lane turns left and the right lane goes straight up Main, but it has to veer left to go around parked cars in front of both that establishment and then all the way up to the hair place that's further up the street. The problem is there's a spot in front of that that's a yellow curb that nobody's supposed to be parking on. And because it's a pizza shop and people are getting a lot of carry out, it's a problematic intersection to start with. But now what we're having is we've got people stopping there prior to the first parking space to run inside and pick up their pizza. They're getting out of their car, going in front of their own car to go into the pizza shop. And then we've got cars coming up Main Street, trying to merge left. And it is a significant injury accident waiting to happen because of the way that intersection is set up. I've spoken to the chief and I've spoken to our public works director, and they both concur that it is definitely a potential problem that we could be facing. And this all just kind of developed over the past week or so since they opened, and it's probably going to just get worse. So I think it's something we need to look at, figure out how we address that, because I do think we've got a little bit of a ticking time bomb there. I have some ideas. We don't have to get into that this evening, but if any of you individually want to talk offline on it, but Mr. Yingling, maybe you and I can talk in the next couple of days and kind of figure out what might be the right course of action to keep something bad from happening right there. So I wanted to inform you guys on it because it is something I'm a little concerned about, and I do think we need to jump on it. That's all I have, Mr. President.
All right, thank you, Mr. Cavacci. Glad to hear that the two of you will be able to talk about this and report back and let us know if there's any, what if anything the city could or should do. I went there the other day. I had a nice pizza carry out, and pleased to see that they've opened and are part of the community now. Move on now to
Mr.
public
President, I'm remiss in not mentioning that I did eat there also, and it is very good. So I'm glad you said that. Thank you.
Where did the two of you park?
I walked up the street, Mr. Mayor.
Ditto. I live a block and a half away, so non-issue for me.
All right.
So now we'll go to the Public Works Committee. Mr. Yingling.
I know the council president and President Pro Temp would never park illegally in front of that place, Mr. Mayor. No report tonight.
Thank you, Mr. Yingling. Recreation and Parks, Mr. Dayhoff.
We have an advisory board meeting tomorrow evening. I'm really looking forward to that. It's a great group, and I'm really enjoying their feedback, and I'm really enjoying their contributions. We're all also really excited about, and Ms. Gruber can elaborate at a later point in time in the meeting upon the Wakefield Park plan, but we're really excited about that. A lot of good things are happening with that, and we're really coming together with a consensus as I think what's going to work really well for everyone and the greater community, and I think that's all good. I believe that'll be it, Mr. President.
All right, thank you, Mr. Dehoff. And finally, on behalf of the Technology Committee, I have nothing to report this evening. I'll move on now to council comments and discussion, where council members get to raise any other issues that are on their minds that did not fall under their committee reports. And we'll begin with Mr. Kavachi.
I have nothing this evening. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Mr. Kavachi. Mr. Dehoff.
I should add that Westminster Police Officer Beaumont is a second generation police officer. I had the pleasure of working with his dad. His dad was on the Maryland State Police, and Mike Beaumont put in a lot of really great years for the city of Westminster, and I guess it's bittersweet that he's retiring. We wish him the best, but we will certainly miss him. And Mr. Kavachi, I've also gotten quite a number of complaints about the parking problem at that pizza shop. And if it means anything, those kinds of problems, they're just all throughout the city. I think people feel that they can just park anywhere these days. It's really something. But it would be good if we could get on top of that intersection there, and I really appreciate you being on it. I think that'll be it, Mr. President. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Dehoff.
Mr. President, if I might,
Mr. Kavachi.
just to make sure I was clear in what I was saying, it's not people parking to go into the restaurant to eat. It's
Correct.
because of the carry out. People are
Correct.
just temporarily stopping, running in, grabbing their pie and running out.
Correct.
And that's what makes it so dangerous because
Correct.
so I just want to be clear on that. The people
Correct.
going inside the restaurant, I don't think that's the problem. So just to
Correct.
be clear.
Correct. And we also have the same problem in College Square. We have the exact same problem. So, I mean, I don't know what the solution is. I'll look forward to your guidance, Mr. Kavachi. Thank you.
Ms. Gilbert.
I have nothing.
Thank you. Mr. Yingling.
Yeah, I've got actually a question, and it's actually geared towards the Wakefield Valley Master Plan. So, as I think as everybody knows, there's been some stir up on social media, and there was an article in the Times about the idea of having like a conference center at that property, which of course nobody has come to us with that proposal, and there's obviously mixed feelings about it. I, for one, actually would welcome that type because, I mean, really what was there before was a conference center. They had a ballroom, they had weddings, they had, a venue that had, multiple activities going on. So anyways, there's no proposal out there right now for that. But the question was about the grant for the master plan and what, let's say like, some of these, something like that could take like 20 years to find somebody, who came along, let's say, 20 years from now, somebody came along and they said, or let's say 10 years, and they say, like, we'd like to buy this place, we'd like to put this conference center here. And, let's say the council at that time, had some sort of appetite for that. What are the grant restrictions that we could actually do something to that property? If any. I was just a little unclear on that. Is it in perpetuity? Is it just related to we can't use the grant funds for a master plan that would include anything like that? So I just want some clarity on that.
Sure. We can probably turn to Ms. Gruber to get some clarity about the purpose of the grant that she's working on right now. But I really think that the grant is just for planning purposes right now, and that while there's certainly actions that we could take that would make future development difficult, if not impossible, and we'd have to consult with Ms. Levan about that. I think this discussion is really just limited to a plan for now and how we see the property being used. But Ms. Gruber, is there anything you'd care to add to that?
So I can certainly read to you section C in the project agreement that speaks to that if you would like me to do that right now.
Go ahead.
So section C, public outdoor recreation in perpetuity, as stated in section 6FS of the Land Water Conservation Fund Act of 1965, sites receiving assistance are to be opened, operated, and maintained in perpetuity for public outdoor recreation use, or be replaced by lands of equal market value and recreation usefulness. The project sponsor must read and comply with the program compliance requirements in the Land Water Conservation Fund Manual. The 6F3 boundary is the legal description of the area that is being protected in perpetuity by section 6F3 of the Land Water Conservation Fund Act of 1965. Sufficient detail acceptable to DNR and National Park Service is required so as to legally identify the lands afforded protection under 6F3, such as meets and bounds survey description. 6F3 states that the property acquired, developed, or improved with Land Water Conservation Fund assistance shall not be converted to uses other than public outdoor recreation. The 6F boundary map goes on record with the locality, National Park Service, and DNR, showing the area being placed under protection of the Land and Water Conservation Act. In most instances, the 6F boundary falls under an entire park being acquired or developed with Land Water Conservation Fund's assistance. Signed and dated copies of the 6F map are required from all project sponsors and will be approved by DNR and NPS. Project sponsors will be required to record in the deed of the property for acquisition projects that the area is protected through section 6F of the Land Water Conservation Fund Act of 1965, or record this language in a restrictive covenant for development projects. Deed wording will be provided to approved project sponsors. Section 6F3 of the Land and Water Conservation Act states that no property acquired or developed with assistance under this section shall, without approval of the Secretary of the Interior, be converted to other than public outdoor recreation uses. Therefore, regardless of whether a conversion of use process has been initiated by the project sponsor, in the event the National Park Service determines that a conversion of use has occurred on the Land Water Conservation Fund site that is subject of this project agreement, the project sponsor shall be liable to DNR to undertake whatever actions are deemed necessary in order to fully address the conversion and to bring the project into compliance with Land Water Conservation Fund requirements, including, if applicable, full replacement of the project.
Thank you, Ms. Gruber. I don't think that at this time we're in a position, since we're not all up to speed, to have a lengthy discussion about this. But I think what that document outlines is certainly what we've said all along, what the mayor and council have said all along, is that there's a substantial commitment to use the property for outdoor recreational activities, and I don't think anybody anticipates that changing. But again, any details about that are the subject for discussion another night.
Mr. President.
Mr. Dingling.
Yeah, well, thank you. That's exactly, I just wanted to know because, you just never know what can happen down the line. And I'd certainly like the ability to give the city flexibility, but no, I don't want to discuss it. I just wanted some clarity and I got that. So thank you to Ms. Gruber for that.
Absolutely, very good. All right, thank you, Mr. Dingling. We'll move on now to ordinances and resolutions. First item is for adoption. That's ordinance number 932, an ordinance of the Mayor and Common Council of Westminster authorizing the disposition of certain real property known as the Winters Lot, located at the northern quadrant of the intersection of West Main Street and John Street, Westminster, Maryland 21157, consisting of lots 1297 and 1298, comprising collectively 10,714 square feet and approved with a parking lot. Ms. Matthews.
Thank you, President Pecoraro. The Common Council introduced ordinance number 932 on February 22nd. As you noted, the ordinance provides for the disposition of the Winters Lot located at the corner of Main Street and Bond Street. We are anticipating selling the lot with our relocation in the next 30 days to 45 West Main. The lease between the city and Winchester West LLC does provide for the sale of the property at a sale price of $120,000. Upon adoption of the ordinance, the 45-day study period that the buyer requested will get underway. So hopefully this property should be sold sometime in the next 60 days or so. I'd be happy to answer any questions that you have.
All right, thank you, Ms. Matthews. Are there any questions for Ms. Matthews on this? I think we discussed it pretty thoroughly the last time this came before us.
Mr. President, just one very, very quick one. How many spots are in that lot? I was asked that question by someone the other day, and I wasn't actually sure.
I don't have an exact count. Mr. Glass, would you happen to know the answer to Councilmember Kavachi's question?
So it's a little over 20, I believe.
Thank you.
I guessed really well. I said 20. Wonderful. Thank you. And with that,
Very good.
Mr. President, I'll go ahead and make a motion that we adopt ordinance number 932.
All right, thank you. There's a motion to adopt. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
There's a second from Ms. Gilbert. Is there any further discussion or any additional questions? Hearing none, we'll go ahead and move on to a vote. All those in favor of adoption of ordinance number 932, please say aye.
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 Those opposed say nay. The ayes seem to have it, and the ayes have it, and ordinance number 932 is adopted. Next item is a adoption of resolution number 21-01, a resolution supporting the City of Westminster's participation in the Sustainable Maryland Municipal Certification Program. Ms. Matthews.
Thank you. This item is a follow-up to your discussion on February 22nd, at which the Mayor and Common Council agreed that the City of Westminster should pursue becoming Sustainable Maryland certified. The first step in the certification process is adoption of a resolution stating the municipality's intent to pursue certification and designating a person to be the formal liaison in contact with Sustainable Maryland. The resolution before you this evening would fulfill this requirement. Once the city does attain certification, the certification would be valid for 3 program years, and recertification is required prior to the end of the 3rd year. I did have a follow-up conversation since your last meeting with the point of contact for the program, and did want to share with you that while at one time Sustainable Maryland had a rolling application date, I did learn that they have since moved to a one-time a year submission of an application. So that submission date is coming up very quickly. It's July 1st. Wanted to share with you this evening what would be required if we try to make that deadline. You would have to form your green team, which, as you may recall, is a mandatory component of the program. That green team would have to have met at least 2 times, and those meetings would need to be documented by a meeting agenda and minutes for each meeting. We would also need to submit an action plan by that date. So I did want to share that information with you. I know you're eager to get started. I did speak to the gentleman about what actions we might take to meet some of the priority requirements. And he was also kind enough to send me examples of some additional action plans beyond those that were in your packet at the last meeting. So with that, Council President Pecoraro, I'd be happy to answer any questions that the Mayor and Common Council have.
All right, thank you, Ms. Matthews. Let's start by getting a motion on the floor. May I have a motion for adoption?
So moved.
There's a motion by Mr. Dayhoff. Is there a
Second.
second? A second by Mr. Kavachi. All right, thank you. Any questions from Ms. Matthews or any discussion?
Mr. President,
Mr. Dayhoff.
I'm really excited about this. This is something that came up on my radar screen quite a number of years ago. And I think when you look at the Bee City initiative and you look at what's developing with the Wakefield Valley Park, when you look at Tree City and some of our other green initiatives, I think this puts the city of Westminster on the cutting edge. And I think this will be a great thing. It's also going to set us up into a position to look for some grants, say for example, for some riparian buffers and some things like that. And I think it'll be a huge help. So I really appreciate all the hard work that went into this, and I'm looking forward to seeing what the future brings with this. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you. Any further discussion? All right, hearing none. We'll move on to the vote. All those in favor of the resolution, please signify by saying aye.
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 Those opposed say nay. I seem to have it, and the ayes have it. Resolution is adopted. Thank you all very much. And we will move forward on becoming a sustainable city. Next item under new business, we have one item to vote to go into closed session. Mr. Cavacci.
Yes, Mr. President, under the statutory authority to close a session under Maryland Annotated Code General Provisions, Article 3-305B, to discuss the appointment, employment, assignment, promotion, discipline, demotion, compensation, removal, resignation, or performance evaluation of appointees, employees, or officials over whom this body has jurisdiction, or any other personnel matter that affects one or more specific individuals, for us to go into closed session.
Thank you, Mr. Cavacci. Is there a second? There's a second by Mr. Dayhoff. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say nay. Opinion of the chair, the ayes have it. Seem to have it, and the ayes have it. And we will go into a closed session at the conclusion of our regular meeting. There are no items of unfinished business of which I am aware. Move on now to departmental reports. Ms. Matthews.
Thank you. I'd like to start this evening to see if Councilmember Dayhoff has a report on behalf of the fire department.
Yes, ma'am. Let's take a look at the January report. For the month of January, there were a total of 498 calls for service. 425 of those calls were for EMS, and 73 of those calls were for fire. 293 were in the city limits. 179 were outside the city. And the overlapping calls were 205. So for 205 calls that the Westminster Fire Department had, we had to, there were multiple calls at the same time for us to provide folks with emergency medical services, and that continues to be problematic. Let's look over here to March. For March, the total calls were, it looks like there were 461 calls. EMS was 393 calls. Fire was 68 calls. 266 were in the city limits. 166 of those calls were just outside the city. And the number of overlapping calls, 53% of the time we had overlapping calls, for a total of 243 calls. Ms. Viskoski, I'll be happy to send you this report so that you don't have to type so furiously. Thank you, Ms. Matthews.
Thank you, Councilmember Dayhoff. Ms. Colston, do you have a report on behalf of the Finance Department?
Good evening. Not too much tonight. We're working diligently to get prepared for the Finance Committee meeting on Wednesday. So Barb and I and all the other department heads have been working together to get that together for them. Other than that, you heard the audit presentation. If anybody has any questions that they didn't get answered tonight, or if you think of something later on, feel free to email or give me a call and I'll be happy to go over that with you.
Actually, Ms. Matthews, I'd like to do that right now, if that's okay.
Certainly.
So, Ms. Colston, I know you weren't here, so I certainly do not want to put you on the spot. But I know we had that one significant finding relative to housing. I definitely recall that being an issue the previous year as well. And I'm sure we probably had, and again, I know this predates your tenure, but I think we had some action items to address that issue. It looks like at least one of those didn't get addressed, if I'm understanding that correctly. Am I understanding that correctly? Is that
Correct.
accurate?
It's a repeat finding. So
Okay.
it just means that they found the same instance again.
And we did have a plan last time that we should, that would have allowed us to correct that, and that did not take place?
That's my understanding, correct?
Okay. So I guess, one, I wanted to make sure I was clear on that. And then I guess two, I'm counting on you to make sure that we don't see that again next year. Is that fair?
That is fair, and I will
Okay.
do my best.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that.
I'd note, Mr. Cavacci, that we'll have a new housing director by that time as well. And I think a significant amount of the responsibility will rest there as well.
I would mention that without having the prior year's audit with me to compare notes, my assumption is that that finding is related to the fact that we've been without a housing director for a while. So it could very well have been a result of that situation, but yeah, we'll look forward to working on it in the future.
Fair enough. Thank you very much. I appreciate that, Ms. Colston.
Mr. President.
Mr. Dayhoff.
Yeah, Mr. Cavacci, I was thinking that was a software glitch that maybe we need to address. I remember reading the remedial action, and I'm going to take another good look at it because I share your concerns on that. Having it called to our attention one time, I mean, that's fair, but having it called to our attention 2 years in a row is unacceptable.
Well, let me suggest this. Why don't we ask Ms. Matthews to report back to us at the next meeting?
That's great.
And she can fill us in on the details.
Great.
And we won't put her on the spot right now because, she's.
Yeah, that's awesome.
But let's ask her to do that, and we can find out where that stands and remind us of what the remedial plan is to deal with that.
And
Which may very well just include appointing a new housing director, which we are about to do. So,
And Mr. President, one other thing.
Mr. Dayhoff.
May I please have a copy, or can the council members be sent out a copy? I was looking for it. Maybe it might be easier just to send us out a single document on the debt schedule. I would like to take a good look at that. And I thought we did some sort of a study. Ms. Colston, I was asking for a study maybe some time ago about our debt to asset ratio and what our industry standards are. I don't know if Dun & Bradstreet does something like that with that or anything, but I would be curious about that also. And I guess I have some follow-up questions, Ms. Colston. I'll catch up with you. I was kind of curious about the amount of debt that we paid this past year as opposed to the previous year. I'll take another look at it. I don't have a really well-formed question at this point in time, but I'll follow up with you. Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, Ms. Matthews. Thank you, Ms. Colston.
In response to Councilmember Dayhoff's interest, I was actually working on the debt schedule today with Ms. Colston and Ms. Palmer, because that is something we intend to present at Wednesday night's Finance Committee. We'd certainly be happy to share that information with the entire group. I also would mention, I believe it was sometime in the last year or two, we did actually have Y River do an assessment of our debt, and I'd be happy to share that study with you as well.
Right. I'd like to see the Y River study. Maybe you sent it out to me and I missed it. I apologize.
No. I can't recall, Councilmember Dayhoff, myself, if we sent it to you. So
Okay.
the thing that happens is you get a duplicate copy.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Standing in for Chief Ledwell tonight, who is on leave, is Major D'Antuono. I don't know if he had a report this evening or not.
Good evening. I don't really have anything to report other than the fact that I anticipate the chief back in the office on Wednesday, which is good news.
Thank you. Mr. Depot. Mr. Depot, are you there? Yeah, okay.
I am now. I lost you, then I'm back. I apologize. Not much to report. The Board of Zoning Appeals did not meet this month, and the Planning and Zoning Commission is not going to meet either. We did meet with the HTC, and that was primarily to discuss their involvement with as a consultant for the East Middle School redevelopment project with the Maryland Historic Trust. And we've also reached out to Councilmember Cavacci to join us as part of this process. And that's it.
Thank you. Mr. Glass.
bring everyone up to speed. I don't know if it was noticed that we had some traffic backups on Locust Street, but the part of the annual paving project is started back up that to be completed right there around the street, out to the development just short of there will be some geotech work done this month to determine what the underlying soils are at the Diffendale lot retaining wall. So that's the first thing that has to happen before we can start with any of that tip up concrete work there. We also had a water main break today on Bond Street, down near its intersection with Mandy Drive. And they were able to fix that live, so we didn't have outages at all. The last thing that is very important, structural issues there with that parking deck. So that's all I have. Questions.
Thank you, Mr. Glass. Ms. Gruber.
And it looks like everybody's froze up.
Good evening. Just a couple of brief things to report in. We are busy preparing for the Celtic Canter. That will be this Saturday, and I am happy to report this evening that we are less than 80 registrations away from completely selling that event out. So we have over 520 registered runners with 200 runners allowed in each of our 3 time slots starting at 9, 10, and 11 a.m. So we have a beautiful week of weather ahead of us, which is fantastic, and that always helps our registration numbers. So we do anticipate that we will reach our capacity of 600 people. And we are currently now, we only have spaces left in our 11 a.m. time slot. So as Councilman Dayhoff indicated, we did complete our 3rd and final public input meeting for the Wakefield Valley Park Master Plan this past Wednesday at the Arts Council. We saw so we had less people show up than were registered to attend. However, the people that did show up provided fantastic feedback. We asked the public this time what priority projects they could identify in what was presented in that version of the master plan that evening. So when we begin to get phasing and cost estimates in on some of the items contemplated in the master plan, we'll then be able to match that up to what is important to the public and have sort of an idea of where it would be best to start when funding becomes available. And I believe that completes my report unless anybody has any questions.
Thank you, Ms. Gruber. And,
Ms. Matthews,
Sure.
if I might real quickly, more a comment than a question. I know Councilwoman Gilbert and I attended live in person the meeting last week, and I just wanted to compliment you, Mrs. Gruber. I was so impressed with the job you did, conveying that information in a really thoughtful and clear and concise manner. It was really well done. I was thoroughly impressed, and I would suspect that everybody else that was there that evening was as well as those watching it online, as I know they were in previous ones. But I thought you really knocked it out of the park, and I just wanted to compliment you on a job well done.
Thank you.
Ms. McCullough, our HR Director.
Good evening. Nothing to report this evening for the HR department.
Great, thank you. And I believe that concludes staff's report this evening. We'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you very much, Ms. Matthews. Are there any additional questions from Ms. Matthews or the rest of the senior staff? All right, if not, then thank you all very much. And now we will move on to the last portion of our meeting, which is citizen comments. When we invite the public to address the mayor and council on any issues that pertain to tonight's agenda or any other city issues. During these virtual meetings, we will invite comments to be sent to our city clerk at comments@westgov.com. Commenters should include their address and phone number with their comments. At this time in every meeting, I will read out the comments we have received. And we have received, in fact, one message, which, let me just pull it up here, I'm sorry. To the mayor and city council for the meeting on March 8th, 2021. Sirs, madams, we have a difficult problem in the city that needs to be addressed. Our neighbor at 43 Liberty Street has been accumulating trash, debris, and business inventory, junk, in front, side, and rear of the house on 48th Street for several years. Not only is it unsightly and dangerous, but an insult to the people of the city. We should not have to live next to a trash dump. The mountains of trash is an invitation for rats and fire. Your Mr. Roy Singer in code enforcement has been very responsive, but his hands are tied because the contract for a private contractor for his department expired some time ago, and he doesn't have a resource to remove the debris. Can we please get this contract reinstated or let him use a city vehicle to get this done? Situation is dire. The renter and the owner of the property have basically ignored Mr. Singer for almost a year now. This was sent by Mr. Dale Chatfield at 47 Liberty Street, Westminster. Thank you, Mr. Chatfield, for your comment, and we will certainly be addressing this. And I believe that concludes all of our comments for the evening and our agenda and the meeting itself. And with that, without objection, we are adjourned. Thank you all and please be safe.